October 15th remote school committee meeting. I'll take a roll call vote of the committee. Tom?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
John?
Here.
Carla?
Here.
Chuck is here. So we're going to begin this meeting with an executive session, and we'll return to open session approximately 7:30. So is there a motion?
The motion says 7:45, so I'll read it as it is, and if we come back earlier, then we come back earlier. Move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the deployment of security personnel or devices, and to return to open session at approximately 7:45 p.m.
Second.
Seconded by John. Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Tom?
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, see you over there. call the school committee meeting back to order. John,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom? Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Thank you. So, for the purposes of this evening, I have moved some of the agenda items around to accommodate guests tonight. So, being that we just had the executive session about the security policy, we'll start with that. Following that, we'll have the high school handbook discussion. And following that, we'll have we'll go into the other two policies, the immunization policy, the non-discrimination and harassment policy. Then we'll have the fall opening update and the appointment to collaboratives. And we'll end with the consent agenda and reports. And
Chuck, may I ask a question?
sure.
Originally, when I had asked the camera policy to be moved ahead, oh no, wait a minute, I do see Joe Huggins here. Okay, never mind. I just see him come in. Okay, never mind.
Okay, so, and joining us from central office and staff tonight is Chris Kelly, Jennifer Stiles, Gail Dowd, John Doherty, Linda Engelson, and Joe Huggins.
And
So,
Mrs. Boynton.
I'm sorry?
And Mrs. Boynton is here as well.
I'm sorry, yes, and Principal Boynton. So let's start with the security cameras policy. We'll have a motion first, and then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll vote on it the next meeting. So, Tom?
Chuck, before we go there, do you, Aaron has asked, and I think it's probably right considering our technical limitations this evening, that we
Oh, yes,
quickly address
I
public
apologize.
comment.
Yep. Public input, is that where you were going?
Yes, sir.
Public input, again, I apologize, we have some technical difficulties, so we don't have the live link, but we do have, we will take emails on that and address those at the end of the meeting. So, thank you.
Okay, so the motion for the security cameras reads, move to accept the first reading of policy ECAF, security cameras in schools.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. For the reading,
And for the reading, file ECAF, security cameras in schools. The school committee works to maintain
Motion to
safe.
waive reading.
second,
Second.
Aaron,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, so before we get into John, did you just want to give that context on it?
Sure. Thank you. We're going to be installing cameras, additional cameras, and updating our camera system throughout the district over the next several months. We felt that this would be a good time to update the security camera policy, which we do not have a lot of verbiage right now in an actual policy on security cameras. So the policy in front of you is a modified version of the MASC policy, which we have altered slightly to match the needs of of our district specifically. The MASC policy is a good starting point, a good template. We did share this with our legal counsel to give his review, and so what you see here are the changes that that he recommended go into the policy. I think the important point, as you can see in this policy ECAF, is that what the purpose of the cameras are, which are for the most part a forensic purpose, except in emergency situations deemed by law enforcement when they would be used for live viewing. The other piece that is a little bit different from MASC is the procedures are not outlined as specific in the policy, but there is a separate procedures document that is internal document that's secure for obvious safety and security reasons. So I just wanted to give that overview before the discussion began.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments on the policy from the committee? Tom?
So, Dr. Doherty, thank you for the background, and thank you for the question and answers earlier. So, in this, there's one minor adjustment here that we can make from a public perspective, and that's in the second to last paragraph. It says access to video recordings from security cameras will be determined at the discretion of superintendent/designee and/or building principal/designee, and then it runs right to the next sentence that says law enforcement emergency response officials.
Yeah.
Just a minor period right there.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing not,
Can I
yes,
just say one more thing that I think is important, and I just noticed it now when I was putting the period down. We obviously haven't put any of this in the handbooks yet, and it does say in the policy that we will. So tonight, when you're looking at the high school handbook, that obviously this piece is not in there yet.
yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier today. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Okay, we'll have a vote on the first reading. Aaron?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
And Chuck? Aye. Thank you, Dr. Doherty.
You're welcome.
Okay, we now have the high school handbook discussion. And I know Principal Boynton is here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
John, can you share my slides?
I can.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much for having me with you guys this evening. Normally we do this in the summer, so it's we're a little late in this. Last year we began a pretty significant dive into the handbook, and I thought that it would be helpful for you to take a look at sort of the overall goals, sort of how we approached looking at the handbook revisions. And we wanted to first consider shifts in practices and handbook language that reduce inherent bias or inequity within RMHS. I just have to say, I'm hearing a really strong echo.
Keep talking so we can
Okay.
isolate it.
Okay, perfect. The second thing is we wanted to revise the language to be more student-friendly. We wanted to ensure that the handbook language is consistent with school committee policy as well as legal requirements. And then we wanted to edit the handbook for clarity, spelling, grammar, etc., any redundancies, anything that looked was contradictory in nature. And school council took this on, and we met monthly, really up through I want to say February. Did a lot of deep work up through January, and tackled really the first 3 sections. The second piece, John, next slide. In looking at the academic section, internally within RMHS, first with the leadership team, and then next with the larger faculty conversation, we wanted to take a look specifically at the academic section, and you'll see some parallels to the overarching goals with some other unique things specific to academics. We wanted to make sure we were considering shifts in practice that reduce inherent bias or inequity within the school, specifically related to academics. We wanted to consider shifts in practices that could decrease student stress around academics, as well as looking at shifts in practices that would be beneficial for more students in the college and post-high school planning process. So those were the lenses through which we looked at the academic language. Work to date on the substantive handbook revisions. In the fall of 2019, RMHS department heads and administration discussed several school-wide practices and made proposals for the staff to review and discuss. And that was at our January 8th, 2020 staff meeting. And we looked at our GPA calculation formula, we looked at our grade scale, we looked at course names and levels as we were undergoing and continuing the course level consolidation. We looked at our transcript and proposed whether, Reading Memorial High School is one of the few high schools that still has a semester-based transcript. So we entered into a discussion. Do we consider a full year transcript? Is that a cleaner communication to colleges in the college admissions process? And then we looked at calculating our process of calculating and communicating class rank and deciles. Following the January meeting, we had planned to continue the conversation in the spring and come to a resolution and a decision. Unfortunately, due to COVID, that did not happen. So we had proposals, but no resolution. John, next slide. Some additional on the school council side, school council began a deep dive into the language of the student handbook. And again, using the guiding principles from the first slide, we migrated the handbook to a shared Google Doc to make comments and propose edits. We also began looking at student handbook samples from other schools within Massachusetts, just to get a feel for what other schools, what they look like, how they're organized. And then in preparation for the January 8th faculty meeting, we actually had a school council meeting on January 7th. And I shared the work that the leadership team had been meeting in preparation for that January 8th faculty meeting, and talked about all of those issues, the academic issues, with school council, with the intention in the spring for those two processes to really merge. John, next slide. And again, revision work was temporarily halted due to the COVID-19 school closure. So no work, unfortunately, was done in the spring or the summer because of the closure. In looking at next steps, we really want to continue our dive into the handbook. This is really good work. It was, a document, really the constitution, if you will, of the high school that had not really had a deep look in many, many, many years. And so 2 years ago, we did sort of a more cosmetic overhaul and shifted the sections around to make it a little more organized, had a new table of contents inserted, and then we were looking more at more substantive language. So we want to continue that process. So October, actually just today, RMHS leadership, we met this morning to restart the discussion about the proposed sort of potential revisions in and around the academic language. And that'll be something that in November, RMHS staff will meet about the proposed revision. And I envision that the staff will indeed vote on those changes, either in support of or not. We'll give it to the staff to vote. And so at department meetings tomorrow, that's where department heads are going to begin bringing that and restarting that discussion with our staff. First school council meeting is scheduled for, I believe it's November 10th. And we will restart the work on the handbook revisions. I think we need to now merge the processes, and we'll start with the academic section to get the school council input on the very same language that the faculty is working on, and merge those two processes. My hope is that in December, school council will vote on the proposed academic language, and then we can get on the school committee docket to share with you that section for revision. So as Dr. Doherty mentioned, we would really like to do this in pieces. I think in some ways it helps keep the process moving along if we have these benchmarks and deadlines, and allows it to be an interactive process, not only with staff and school council, but with you all at school committee as well. And I really like that, I like the interactive process and the nature of it. Between December and February, December 2020, February 2021, the school council will ideally propose and discuss revisions to additional sections, really the first half of the document if we take it in chunks. And then from February to March, share these revisions with RMHS staff for feedback, and then in a feedback loop present proposed revisions ideally in March to school committee. And then we'll do the last half of the document, March to May, proposing and discussing revisions. Staff will look at revisions, and then June, July, final revisions. Part of this is in coordination with our work for NEASC, our decennial visit. And we don't have a set date yet, so I've requested in the middle of May as our preferred dates, but I don't have yet confirmation of when that would be. And our development of the Portrait of the Graduate and NEASC's approval of our Portrait of the Graduate will likely change some of the language in the handbook. We would need to add that in, and it might very likely change our school core values. So just know that some of this is resting on the NEASC work that we're undertaking. John, I'm not sure if there's a next slide. Actually, that might be it. Nope, that's it. That's it. So you can stop sharing your screen, and I'm happy to take questions. The current handbook, hopefully you saw with the change memo, there were some things that reflected the COVID-19. Again, that I'm hearing that feedback loop. The COVID-19 return to school considerations, new schedule and whatnot, and there were some things that did not make sense to change because ideally this is a temporary situation, and we're also looking to make additional, more substantive changes. So thanks for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kate. Is there any committee questions? Sean?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I fully understand here. So the content on pages 3 and 4, which were the consider, revise, ensure, edit, those are sort of the outlines of the big refresh of the handbook. Am I understanding that correctly? And the adjustments to the handbook that we are voting on this evening are confined to those things that are outlined in the 2-page memo in our packet. Is that true?
That's correct. Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
I didn't even get a chance to write raise.
I saw you having to do that. So.
You beat me to it. Mrs. Boynton, thank you for the summary for tonight and the plan for this year. Seeing that plan for this year is very encouraging. And so thank you for taking the time to lay it out and get everybody prepared to execute against it. In a year, there's a lot of other things going on, right? So I don't want to minimize any of that. There's a lot of other things going on. But I also applaud the updates that need to be made. Somewhat going back to our conversation last year, there are quite a few updates that need to be made. And so the document as it is, it is what it is, right? But there are the updates I'm looking forward to. I'm very much looking forward to the feedback throughout the year. The December conversation, the March conversation, the June conversation that we see. And I'm sure that the staff and school council will look forward to participating as you go through. Just as a note, I have a long list of things that I can share with you that you can take back that are just procedural, really, mostly policy, legal related things where they don't necessarily align yet, but I'm sure you have already got those on your list, but just to double check and dot the I's and cross the T's appropriately.
I would greatly appreciate that, honestly. Someone with attention to detail and the linear, because honestly, and I think many handbooks suffer sort of from this. You're adding and not necessarily cross-referencing to make sure that things are consistent, not redundant, not necessarily overlapping or contradictory. So there's a lot there. I would greatly appreciate that.
So I'll happily send you that list. And that'd be great. And I know school council meetings are public meetings too, so if I have a chance, I'll drop in on some of those because they're always entertaining. So thank you.
Perfect. I'll be having Stacy share the Zoom links actually on the website, and it's a single link that, because I had it as a recurring meeting for the whole year from November to May.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay,
Would you like the motion now, sir?
sure.
Move to approve the 2020-2021 RMHS Student Handbook.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? No. Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Chuck, aye. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
You
Thank
too.
You too. Okay, now we'll go back into the policy, and the next one is the school immunization of students.
All right. Move to accept the first reading of policy JLCB, immunization of students.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
File JLCB, immunization of students.
Move to waive the reading.
is there a second?
Second.
Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay. Dr. Doherty, did you want to give some background?
Sure. I'll just give a little bit of background here. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. It's been updated from, looks like the 2007 was the last time this was reviewed. And the biggest change is the new requirement, which is December 31st for the flu vaccine. So this is right, I believe, right from the MASC changes. So we felt that it would be important for the committee to update this policy, given the new requirement that the governor has put in place. And the note is very clear that this will remain in effect until rescinded by the governor.
So, John, you just said December 31st. What says that? Where does that
December
show?
31st is when all students K to 12 have to have their flu vaccine by.
Okay, that's not in the policy. Does that need to be in the policy?
No, I don't believe so, because that was the governor's order. So you would actually have to go back and change the date if you put that date in there.
I think that's covered by reference to the mass school immunization requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Sean, did you have? Or is that from before? Carla?
Quick question. What is the consequence to a family who is opposed to getting the immunization if they're for reasons other than religious reasons?
So I believe there are two ways that you could get a waiver, I guess. One is for religious reasons, but also you could get a written statement from the doctor.
And what if a family is opposed to getting the flu vaccine? What are the consequences, I guess?
So like any of the other immunization requirements, they would not be allowed to be in school.
I know that's not our ball of wax.
No, that's more at the state level.
I know. I just have a fundamental issue with making the flu vaccine a contingency on being in schools.
Yeah, just as an FYI, that's the same for any of the required immunizations. That's not just for the flu vaccine.
John, do we, through our school nurses or anything, offer any ability if someone in hardship can't get it otherwise?
So it's interesting you say that. You actually, my understanding is that you actually have to order the vaccine doses almost a year in advance. So obviously we didn't know that this was happening a year in advance. So the only doses that were ordered by the town, this would come through the town. The only ones that were ordered through the town were for the adults. And that's the town has had, I believe, one clinic already, and there's a couple more coming up.
So the state, since they made this mandate, isn't going to send out vaccines to all the towns that need them?
Well, they don't do that for any of the other ones either, Chuck, any of the other immunizations.
Well, I mean, this one's a little bit different, but Tom?
So I mean, I guess this unfortunately is a little bit of a no choice, no problem right now as a state law, really, or a state regulation. There is a difference though between the flu vaccine and the other vaccines. The other ones are one and done for the most part, or maybe two and done in case you need a booster a little bit later in their year versus an annual process. And the other ones are well known to absolutely solve the problem, and the flu one is maybe 50%. So, that's where most of the objection comes from many parents that I talk to that have those concerns. I'm comfortable with the policy because of the carve-outs that are there with regards to the written statement and the religious beliefs. I wouldn't be comfortable if that wasn't there. I don't know whether people are going to be able to get that written statement or things along those lines, but it is what it is in that regard. This is one of those cases where from the state has ruled and set the regulation, and unless and until that's changed, it is what it is. So if you want to change it, we got to change it and kind of campaign to change it at the state level as opposed to our level.
I will tell you, and I'm not. The policy is the policy, but Massachusetts. What we were told by the commissioner today, as a matter of fact, is that Massachusetts has the highest immunization rate for children in the country at 80% for the flu vaccine. Sorry, for the flu vaccine.
John?
I'm going to agree with Carl on this. I have a hard time having a child mandated by the state. Again, it's a regulation from the state, but this is something that the state's overstepping, in my belief, in forcing this down. We don't have any way around this, unfortunately. I know with the town's flu clinics, it's only for adults 18 and older. Many years in the past, the state has run out of doses. what happens if we're in a case like that?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what to tell you, John.
you know, I look at this like, I mean, it's like PPE really, right? So if the state can provide PPE to cities and towns, how can they make this mandate and not have an ability to provide cities and towns vaccines if they need them? Just to, you know, again, I know it's not a battle we can fight here, but just frustrating.
Oh, in the past, it's been a quantity issue where they've actually run out of doses. So my worry is here, we've got this policy, we're going to basically mandate that a child's going to be removed from school if they don't get it. If the state does run out of it, what's the recourse for the districts at this point? And that'd be something I'd really like to hear on the second reading if you can find anything out.
John, could you be more specific in terms of what you would like me to research?
Yeah, can we find out from DESE if the state runs out of available flu vaccines for children under the age of 18? What is their recourse for getting a dose? Or are they going to be waived because there's no vaccine available? And I'm not saying I know for a fact we're going to run out, but that has happened in years past, and this doesn't give us any recourse if this does happen in Mass.
Sean?
Yeah, so I don't really want to touch the politics on this, and we're kind of banging our heads against the wall. I had the same reaction that, you know, this vaccine is very different than some of the others that are required. So I agree with those points. I view this a little bit pragmatically. Just, you know, I don't know if this will put people's minds at ease or not, but if you think about the similarity between the symptoms of the flu and COVID, and think about how disruptive to our attempts to get kids into the schools a flu, you know, a bout of the flu bouncing around would be. I mean, you know, this is another kind of belt and suspenders thing from my perspective, where we're trying to reduce the number of disruptions that we're inevitably going to have throughout the year in terms of potential cases, you know, actual cases, potential contacts, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I don't think we really have a choice anyway, but that's the one sort of plus side in my mind as I consider this policy.
Thanks, Sean. Carla?
I guess one of my problems lies within how it's enforced, and because the flu vaccine is not a one and done, as Tom said, it you know, there's a 50% chance that it's going to work. For a child that has had all their vaccinations and has never had a flu vaccination, if they were to have some reaction to it, that, you know, that's an issue with the state. And I just don't think that kids should take the hit for this. The point of this on a state level is to make sure that our hospitals don't get overwhelmed. So if you are going to potentially end up in the hospital because you get the flu, then get the flu shot if you choose to. But to mandate across the board for all kids, I just don't feel like kids need to take the hit for it, which I feel like they're taking the hit for it in a lot of instances with COVID. That's my problem with it. So I guess the enforceability piece of it is a concern for me as well, because we're going to have to deal with that as a district. That is a piece of it that we have control over. Chuck, you're on mute.
Someone muted me. We'll vote on the first reading. Tom?
Oh, so we're doing now? Okay.
Can I just add one other thing?
Before we go there, yeah.
Sure.
Chuck, before you vote. So the guidance from DESE, just so you're aware, is Enforcement is at the local level. We encourage schools to, this is a quote from Desi, we encourage schools to work with families and providers to satisfy the requirements for families who are not compliant on January 1st.
But enforcement is at our discretion then is what I'm seeing in that regard.
I can get further guidance on that for the second reading.
So, I mean, I guess where I was going to go just on that front is the policy itself does not include any enforcement mechanisms, which is another reason why I'm somewhat comfortable voting with the policy as it is right now. We took out in another policy reading recently a rather difficult enforcement mechanism for something that we thought was a little bit too draconian, and unfortunately this one doesn't have anything in that regard. So that's a reason why I'm comfortable voting for it as well, is that it's not actually documented here, and it gives us a little bit of leeway from a procedure after the fact, I guess, as the case may be.
Thank you. Aaron?
I would definitely want clarification on that before we do our second reading. That's a pretty vague language. And I think we need to be really clear cut how we're going to approach this, because we already know that there are families that are upset about this mandate from the state. So I think it would be unrealistic to think that there's not going to be pushback. And it's not a given that everybody gets their child the flu shot every year. So I think before we do our second reading, we need to be really clear on how we're going to approach that, because otherwise I think we're just setting ourselves up for a difficult situation.
Plus, I think from the other side of it, if we have a policy that says we're mandating this, but we know that there is leeway in that, we could be setting ourselves up from liability for somebody who said, why did you make the decision to let that kid in school when he or she has the flu? Because we made an exception. So it's that loose language sets us up for a liability potentially. Carla?
But you can still get the flu shot and get the flu, Chuck.
I know.
So, but I hear what you're saying in terms of we have a policy and then what is the enforcement of it? Is it in conjunction with that policy, or is it not tied to it?
Okay,
I'm happy to get more information for the second reading.
Thank you.
is everyone comfortable with the vote now? Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
John, sorry.
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Thank you, John. And now the other policy is on the non-discrimination and harassment policy.
So,
Well, we want to have a motion first.
oh, that's right. Yep, sorry.
Motion to accept the first reading of policy AC, non-discrimination and harassment.
Second.
Seconded. Tom?
File AC.
No, we're going to vote on the motion, to read the motion first.
we
Policy. Yes, Carla?
Aye.
Aaron?
Wait, Chuck.
Wait, no. Tom's motion was to accept the reading. Right?
Yes.
Right, yeah, right. Go ahead. I am getting ahead of myself.
File AC,
Move to waive the
non-discrimination.
reading.
There's where we need.
That's where we need to vote, Chuck. Yeah, exactly.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, Dr. Doherty.
Yes, thank you. So where this policy revision comes from is in August, the Title IX law changed. Because the Title IX law changed, we had to come up with new procedures internally on how to run Title IX investigations. On the website now, we have guidance and documents regarding the Title IX changes and the investigatory process for both non-Title IX issues and Title IX issues. What this policy is, this is not a discrimination and harassment policy. You have another policy already on that. What this does basically is the introductory policy for the other policies that say that we are going to have these policies in place. So this is, as you can see, there was a lot of changes that were made regarding this policy. This also was put by legal counsel.
Thank you. Aaron?
Could you repeat what you just said, John? We have another harassment policy?
Yes, you have a much more intense policy. It's ACAB or something like that. You have a discrimination and harassment policy, which lists all of the investigatory procedures. I'll find it for you.
Okay, I apologize that I didn't realize that because I was thinking that this one is missing a heck of a lot of information.
Oh, no. This is just a general overview policy leading to the other policies.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Anybody else?
Policy ACAB and ACAC. Are your harassment and discrimination policy.
Any other comments, questions? Carla?
Thank you. So for paragraph 1, the first half of paragraph 1 talks about discrimination, and then it lists like it says, the Reading Public Schools do not tolerate discrimination against students, parents, employees, or general public on the basis of, and then it lists all the qualifications. When you list those qualifications under harassment, they're not the same. I just for consistency, can you pick one way of saying it or another? For example, under discrimination, you say sex, but under harassment, you refer to it as gender. So just for consistency's sake, maybe make them both gender. And then under the harassment, it says pregnancy or pregnancy status. And under the discrimination qualifications, it talks about immigration status. So I would just suggest to be consistent between those two.
Okay.
Then I had a question on.
I'll check to see if there's a reason why it's written this way in this policy and different in the other policy, but I understand what you're saying.
Sure, and because in the third paragraph down, they're listed again. I would almost just list it one way if that's what the intent is. So you only have to change it in one place if it ever has to be modified. In the first paragraph, the second to last sentence, in addition, the district provides equal access to all designated youth groups. Do you know what that means?
In addition, the district provides equal access to designated youth groups.
It's okay if you don't have an answer now.
I will check on that as well.
Okay, and then down on the third paragraph, the Reading Public Schools policy of non-discrimination will extend to students Just to be consistent, I would say employees rather than staff. Then again, there's kind of inconsistencies from the top of that paragraph to the bottom. You talk about individuals with whom we do business. And I almost, at the second to last paragraph, when it talks about discrimination again, on account of race, color, sex, gender identity, I almost would delete that because it's already mentioned above, just to try and be consistent. And the same thing in the fourth paragraph. The fifth line down where it starts, because of their race, color, sex, gender identity, I would almost delete that just because it's already listed. Because it seems like we list it multiple places, but it's not all consistent. If I can just make one more suggestion, I would think about if we can add the words creed or political opinion into this.
Okay.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Tom?
So a lot of what Carla just said, I'm in whole agreement with, if it matters or helps. But Carla, I just have a question, and maybe it's my naivete a little bit here, but what are your intentions with creed?
Those were, out of the two, I was just looking up, like, out of the two, my vote would be political opinion, because creed is, I think, more of an overall statement where political opinion is a little bit more defined or narrow.
I mean, I'm on board with the idea that we don't discriminate against people because of their political opinion, students or anybody else. I think that's a means that we should get back to normalcy, if I guess that's such a thing in our society overall. So if we can get that in here, great. If there's some reason we can't, I'd like to understand that as well. If there's a protected class limitation or something else along those lines. I don't see everything in here as a protected class, so I think it should be reasonable to add. But yeah, so thank you for that feedback.
Sean?
So I appreciate the intent. I'm not sure the phrase political opinion, an opinion is like, what do I think about this topic versus maybe political affiliation or something is a better way to capture it. If I'm understanding what your objective is, Carla. The other thing, and I know Dr. Doherty, you'll tease this out with our attorneys, but I do think that all of these things are protected classes under either various titles or state discrimination laws. So, I don't know what that says about whether or not we include something else or we, think about another way to address it. But, we'll see what the attorneys say about that. And then one other comment I wanted to make, Carla, I think you were suggesting there at the end, like in the fourth paragraph, if I heard you correctly, I think you suggested that we could get rid of the list of reasons why somebody might be discriminated against, because you've already said it a number of times. I actually think it's important to include it. I agree with you that, if we can keep it as consistent as possible, that makes sense. I actually think it's important to include it though, because what we don't want to do is have our policy say, if you're interested in filing a complaint, you've been discriminated against, here are all the procedures you go through. Like it has to be for one of these reasons that is, a protected class, if you will, I think, and it would be our objective, right? As opposed to somebody filing a complaint and saying, I don't think the teacher liked my shoes that day, right? I mean, that would be a different process than some of these formal processes around protected classes.
Right. Sorry, Chuck, is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
I would like it to be consistent. So if we have a list either the lists need to be consistent, or we need to refer back to when we mention it one time potentially. But I'm fine with that. I'm not sure if all of these are protected classes. And I don't know the true definition of a protected class, but potentially some of these may not be protected classes. And that would be my concern.
Aaron?
I agree with Carla's feedback about the consistency in the language, and I appreciate you catching that, because I hadn't caught that some things were mentioned in some paragraphs and not mentioned in others. I also agree with Sean that saying political opinion to me is too broad, because we run the risk that a political opinion is contradictory to the other things that we say are protected here. And I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to create a situation where someone can harass someone else based on one of the things that we've listed here, and then say it's because it's their political opinion that they can say those things. So I'd be curious what the lawyer says about getting into politics, period, because I just think that's far more nuanced and complicated, but I don't know, maybe political affiliation is more clear-cut. I'm not sure. I still think it gets rather risky, but that's just my 2 cents on that.
Tom?
So I would agree with the feedback on political affiliation as a difference instead of opinion. I'm on board with that change. I do think it's important that we try to add it in. I've had parents talk to me about how their children were addressed because of their political affiliations, that I think is important that we make sure we don't say is acceptable in some way, shape, or form, right? So, and I think that's, I don't know if this is the right place to put that, or if there's a better place to put that necessarily, but I think that's the reason why I support Carla's addition there, is because I want to make sure that we make sure our school environment is welcoming for all students, regardless of their political affiliation or these other things too. And that's my intent with supporting that model overall. So.
Sean?
I don't want to beat this to death, because we clearly need guidance from our attorneys on this. I would just say the one thing that gives me pause on this, and I wholeheartedly support the intent here. The one thing that gives me pause, though, and it was similar to what Aaron was saying, you can disagree with somebody on matters of politics. You can't disagree with somebody about their race or about their gender or about their homelessness status or what have you. And I'd be hesitant to create a situation where, fervent disagreement could be painted as harassment, right? And it's different from the scenario, Tom, that I think you're describing. But there's a fine line to walk there in terms of, are political beliefs really the same as some of these other, protected classes that are, I'll say, characteristics that are sort of fundamental to somebody versus kind of a decision you've made for yourself, if that makes sense. So just something to think about as we seek guidance on this.
Dr. Doherty, then John Parks.
So I'm just piggybacking on what Tom said. I'm not sure it belongs in this policy, but my guess is it belongs in another policy. So I will look through the other policies to see that, because I think the purpose of this policy is about discrimination. And I'm not sure that the two mesh, including the political affiliation, but I can check. I'll see if there is another policy that would be a better match.
John?
Yeah, I was actually going to say pretty much what Dr. Doherty just said. This fits more under the bullying policies that we have as a reason than I think it fits under this. This is more, looking at this list, it is protected classes under most HR situations and under most laws. I do agree that if you have a different political affiliation, you should feel safe talking about it, without a doubt. You know I have different beliefs than some on this panel. We should all be very comfortable talking to each other at this point, and not feeling bullied or harassed. That's why I think the bullying, putting it into that bullying portion, fits more than putting it into harassment.
Carla?
I think that this definitely falls under, in this policy, under discrimination and harassment. But Dr. Doherty is thinking that, and maybe not so much bullying, because there's strict guidelines for what actually constitutes bullying, but maybe a retribution type of situation. So potentially it's under our retribution policy.
Yes.
And I'm also thinking of it in terms of, as students get older, and are exploring their thought processes more in classrooms, that this becomes more and more important.
Tom?
Two more things here just to round this out. I'm on the same page with Carla that there is a difference here between harassment and bullying, and I think it is more, and even discrimination. I think the discrimination actually happens as well. Fair or unfair, it is kind of a reality. The beauties of having an online meeting and also having a computer available means you can do some research, and whether we think legalmatch.com is a valid source or not, Massachusetts has its own laws, but legalmatch.com includes some states' laws also protect people on the basis of gender identity, sexual orientation, political ideology, and service in a state militia. We have gender identity, we have sexual orientation to a degree. Political ideology might be a good word to put here. Obviously, Massachusetts may not be one of those states. The other thing I wanted to throw out here is just I don't know if anybody saw it, but recently there's been an article about a student in Gloucester who felt like he was discriminated against or harassed because of his political ideology and support for a certain candidate. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's just Reading we're talking about, although we are Reading, and so the policy is a Reading policy, but it happens here in our state, it happens elsewhere for those types of things, and I want to make sure that we, again, are protecting our students to be able to say, within reason, we don't want them to use that as a reason to hate somebody, right? But within reason, to be able to express their political views.
Anybody else? Okay, vote on the first reading. Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
And Chuck? Aye. Thank you, John. And now we're going to move on to the fall reopening update.
Okay, I'm going to bring my screen back up. Why isn't this working?
We see it, John.
Yeah, it's not for some reason opening up the,
You just scroll through the pages.
hold on a second. Let me try this again. Oh, I know what happened. Sorry about that. Okay. So continuing on, I want to give you some updates. A lot of this has already been communicated to the community. First of all, before I go any further, I know I've been saying this at every meeting, but I do truly thank everyone during this pandemic for their flexibility, their patience, the amount of effort and time that they've put into it. And I'm including in this parents, teachers, administrators, other staff. Everybody is making changes. Everyone is making sacrifices. Everyone has been as flexible as they possibly can. And, you know, we always seem to be going 2 steps forward, and then there's a curveball, and we have to make adjustments along the way. So we really appreciate everyone's flexibility during this entire process. And I know it's been a challenge, and we truly do appreciate it. So where we are right now is that when we're in remote instruction, and I think it's important to note that we have live instruction going on throughout the school day. And I think that is what is a little bit different than several other school districts. A lot of the remote learning for other school districts is primarily asynchronous versus synchronous. We made a conscious effort as part of our plan to have our remote instruction live and synchronous. So, and that's a tribute to the hard work of our teachers and the work that they've been doing. So again, kudos to them. I'm hearing some very positive things, seeing some very positive things of what our teachers are doing in the classroom. On October 13th, we had the cohort B grades 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8 come in, except for Birch Meadow, and that their cohort A is going to start next week for them, and that's due to the module project, which you're going to hear a little bit about later. Things are going very, very well at these grades. It's just great to see kids again. Large amounts of kids coming into these buildings. On October 19th, cohort A will be in for grades 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. And that includes Birch Meadow. And on October 26th, and I'll get into this in a little bit, grades 11 and 12 will be coming in at the high school. So before we get into a little bit of the details, I want to give a context of things that we talked about in August when we were initially introducing the fall reopening plan to the committee and to the community. And we used a lot of different sources, resources, guidance from a variety of reputable organizations and groups in coming up with our fall reopening plan. And we really focused on two things. One was the health and safety piece, and the second was the remote learning piece. So I'll start first on the health and safety piece. When we were developing our plan, we obviously put on the forefront the health and safety of our staff and students. And we based it on scientific data, scientific research from the CDC, the World Health Organization, the Harvard School of Public Health, and DESE guidelines. That health and safety requirements included a self-check by parents and staff prior to entering school each day, the 6-foot physical distancing, the proper hand hygiene, the cleaning and disinfecting, the masks worn by all staff and students, the cohort model of having small groups, the week in-person, week remote model, instead of doing multiple cohorts during a single week, making sure that we were doing the misting disinfecting on Fridays as opposed to the middle of the week, to allow for 72 hours, and the proper maintained ventilation. All of this is a little bit different in some ways than other school districts, but again, we felt that what was important and should have been on the forefront is the health and safety of our staff and students. The other piece that we wanted to make sure we focused on was the remote learning, because realistically, we felt that both when you're hybrid remote and at some point, if we have to go fully remote again, having a much more robust remote learning platform was going to be critical. And we learned a lot of things from the spring and what we needed to do differently due to the efforts of Chris and her team, Jen and her team. A lot of trainings were going on during the 10 days. Curriculum tools were analyzed and purchased, that we wanted to have a pretty strong synchronous live teaching model, which is different than many other school districts. Having more of a live teaching model when you're remote doesn't necessarily substitute for in-person, but it certainly allows teachers to build those relationships throughout the day. We also wanted to make sure that students had access to technology and internet, and that's been exhibited by the number of laptops and hotspots that we have given to families. We've aligned our curriculum tools and platform, and the teachers have done a great job providing engaging instruction. So we strategically created a plan that we felt was solid and that we were going to be able to use in different settings. When we went to the hybrid piece, we knew that when we were providing the 6-foot distancing, that would be about 12 to 15 students per classroom, depending on the size of the classroom. In order to get students in person more frequently, we felt that it was best for the students to be with their class in satellite classrooms during the same time period, so that teachers didn't have to teach both remote and both live stream and in person at the same time. It's two completely different skill sets. So this is why we came up with the model that we did. We also made sure that lunch was spread out into 2 locations, again, for physical distancing purposes. The 4-day in-person, 4-day remote, where Fridays are all remote, again, was to have a continuous learning model of the same type for a continuous period of time. We want to make sure that some of our high needs, critical high needs kids in our preschool were in 5 days a week. and the rest of our high needs and kindergarten were in 4 days a week. All of these things were strategically put together as part of the plan. However, what has gotten in the way, as we all know, is that we've had staffing vacancies that have prevented some of the levels from phasing in. When we were doing the phase-in approach, we purposely picked the levels either developmentally should be in school more often, sooner, that would have more difficulty with remote learning, or the staffing needs were less so that we were able to bring them in, that there weren't as many vacancies, or the way that the structure is at that level allowed us to bring the students in. So that's why the grades 1 and 2 and the middle schools were brought in this week. 1 and 2 certainly would benefit from in-person because of the developmental nature, that they would struggle more with the remote learning. And the middle schools, the way that with the team structure set up, it allowed us, and the fact that they did not have a lot of vacancies at their level, allowed us to bring those 2 groups in. So that left grades 3 through 5 and the high school, which we've not been as successful getting all of those vacancies filled. So currently at the elementary level, we have 11 tutor/paraeducator positions, primarily at 3 schools, Rich Meadow, Wood End, and Killam. And we have 1 long-term teacher position at one of our schools to phase in grades 3 through 5. We've also looked at, could we just phase in grade 3 right now? To do that, we would still need 4 positions to be phased in with the hybrid model that we have in place. At the high school, it's a little bit more complicated. We have 6 paraeducator positions right now and 2 long-term teacher positions for that model to begin to move forward. So as a result, we felt that we wanted to get students in those 2 levels in person at least part of the time, because we felt that was important for them to have in-person connections with their teachers. So at the high school, and we've been working very closely with the high school teachers over the last few weeks, Principal Boynton have been working with the department heads and administrators and the scheduling to make this happen. So we're going to maintain the week-on, week-off model. We really can't change the week-on, week-off model. Families, staff, students have adjusted their schedules, and to make those changes to a different type of model would actually disrupt all the levels, not just at the high school. The way it's going to work is we're going to have each class divide into half approximately by alphabet split. So we're going to do it as close as possible to get to a balance, so that we have under the 15 students to be able to not have satellite classrooms with this model. Week 1 in the model, Monday, Tuesday, would be upper half of the alphabet in person. The lower half would be live streamed in. Wednesday, Thursday would be the lower half of the alphabet in person. The upper half would be live streamed in. And then Friday would be a remote day. Week 2, you would have the opposite. You would have a remote week, and then the other cohort would be coming in and doing what was done in week 1. So on October 26th, grade 11 and 12 will be coming in person. Grade 9, 10 will be remote using the model I just described above. And then November 2nd, grade 9 and 10 will be in person, and grade 11 and 12 will be remote. Chuck, I think John has a question. I'm more than happy to take it.
John Parks, do you have a question?
I do. John, with this type of split, is this going to allow for cleaning between the Tuesday, Wednesday? And what are we looking for cost differentials for the cleaning if we're doing this?
There would not be any, well, we've got cleaning going on throughout the entire day now, John, or we will be once the kids are in the room. We would not be doing additional cleaning, like a Friday cleaning we would not be doing during the week, if that's where we're going. If you remember, these kids would have been in person anyway, as part of the cohort.
Thank you.
Grades 3 through 5, we've not made any determinations yet. We are currently working with grade 3 through 5 teachers. The model that we proposed for high school developmentally may not work as well with grades 3 through 5 students. So we are working with the grade 3 through 5 teachers to see, is there another modification of the model that we can do to try to get students in school more frequently. So no determination has been made yet on grades 3 through 5. As you know, we've received several emails over the last few days regarding this change in the hybrid model, and understandably so. Here are some of the questions that have come up, and I'm going to attempt to answer them as best as I can. 3 foot instead of 6 foot is a question that's come up frequently. I think a couple of things on this. One is that although DESE has given some guidelines regarding going as low as or a minimum of 3 feet, they still recommend strongly that you go 6 feet whenever possible. The CDC recommends this, not requires, but recommends the 6 feet. World Health Organization does. To go to something lower would disrupt a lot of the things that we've already put in place, first of all. Second of all, I think that we may have staff that would be requesting for some leaves because of the 3 foot versus the 6 foot. In the conversations that I've had with staff as we've been developing these plans, there was a lot of nervousness from a health perspective about the 3 foot model versus the 6 foot model. We would still need some satellite classrooms with the 6 foot model because the 3 foot model, you still probably anything over 23, 24 students would require a satellite classroom. Another question that's come up is parent volunteers to fill vacancies. And I appreciate that parents are willing to volunteer their time. There's a couple of challenges with this. One is that from a liability standpoint, we really can't have parents supervising students without an employee present. If we did look at this, they would have to become employees. We could certainly look at having a parent as an employee split a job. So if they're in a cohort A, cohort B model themselves, with they're home 1 week and they're available the second week, and we found another parent that was willing to job share, we could certainly look at that. But they would have to be employees. I know some parents are willing to give a day or a few hours to supervise a classroom. If you think about right now with the 11, just use the 11 vacancies at the elementary level, you would need to have a day covered for each of the 4 days times 11 vacancies, which is 44 time slots, assuming everyone could give 1 day. That becomes a logistical nightmare to organize. And I will tell you right now that I'm already concerned about our staffing levels with the students that we have in person. Our principals are playing a much greater role of being in classrooms, covering for teachers or covering a satellite room or something like that. We just don't have the bandwidth right now to be able to logistically monitor those types of things. Another question that came up was about,
Sean had a question on that?
yes,
Yeah, a couple questions on this. One, can we get a better understanding of the specifics of the liability concerns? I mean, I have to imagine that we have instances where on field trips, for instance, there are times when students are being supervised only by a parent volunteer without a staff member present. So, there are other instances where we incur some liability and we sort of figure out how to work through it. And then the second thing is on the job share idea, I wonder if it would behoove us to invest a little bit of time in sort of formalizing that, meaning, could we define specifically what that model would look like? We would need 2 parents in a classroom to volunteer, 2 days every other week or whatever that would exactly look like. And sort of formalize it a little bit and allow the, the classes and the schools that are impacted right now to specifically advertise, specifically do outreach to parents to consider that job share arrangement.
we could certainly do all that, John. Again, my caution is that right now it's a bandwidth issue. We can do anything, but our principals are already overloaded. As you know, we do not have an HR director right now. So these are things that would just, we could certainly try our best to do that. But right now there's a lot of other things going on. And to the liability issue, if a student gets injured in a classroom setting, we are liable if it's not an employee. And certainly we would have to do all of the necessary query checks and fingerprinting and all that. My other concern is the more people we introduce into the buildings, the greater risk of infection as well. And we purposely right now have no volunteers coming in the buildings.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But even, I mean, in the model where we fill these roles with paras, we're also going to introduce another form of cross-infection, which is that they work with one cohort 1 week and another cohort the following week, right? So some of that offsets a little bit, potentially, when you talk about introducing more volunteers or more bodies into the building. Could we, I think this committee's said repeatedly, and I think FinCom has signaled the same, that there's support for sort of whatever we need from a resource perspective. And I brought this up before in different contexts, but, if it's about managing the logistics of, a few dozen volunteers or several dozen volunteers, I mean, could we bring in, temp help from a staffing agencies or something that we could do to help take some of that off of your plates and make some of these models, more feasible?
Sean, the other, if I can just add to this, the other issue that with parent volunteers is the confidentiality issue.
Okay, I mean,
Because they are going to be having access to student records because of the nature of being an in-classroom support. So an employee is different than a volunteer. Volunteers don't have that same access.
So, when I volunteer in my daughter's class for some math workshop or something, other than the quantity of time, how does it differ from the many other ways we deploy volunteers in the classroom
You're actually going to be supervising students because you will no longer have a teacher in the classroom or another adult that's an employee of the Reading Public Schools. I think these are all great suggestions. I'm not sure logistically if any of these can be pulled off. And my other concern is sustainability. because if you do not have enough people to do this, we're finding we can't get people to we can't hire people. If we don't have enough volunteers to pull this off, or we have enough just to slightly pull it off, and then people pull out, they can't do it anymore, they may get sick, or whatever the case may be, now we're right back to where we were before. Sustainability is absolutely critical if we're going to do something, anything like that. And those are all big concerns that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I hear is we're hesitant to try something that could work, might not, because it might leave us in the place we're already in, and we don't really have a path out of at this point. So, you know, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear more. I'd still be interested to hear more about the sort of the liability piece, and if there are any solutions to that, whether, you know, we need to invest in a liability policy, or, you know, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of energy from parents who want to get their kids back in the classroom, who are sort of desperate to do it, and as a stopgap until we're able to hopefully fill these positions, you know, I'd rather be thinking about what would have to happen and how do we make that work, instead of shutting it down.
I'm not trying to shut it down, John. I'm just trying to be realistic.
John, I don't, just to Sean's point on the liability, I think you could probably check with with the town manager, but I'm pretty sure that volunteers are covered under our liability coverage with Maya. But just so you know that, I wanted to go back to the 3 foot to 6 foot thing. So are you saying if we went to 3 feet, we'd be able to get 3 to 5 back?
I don't think you will be, because I think you may lose teachers.
That's not my question. My
Well,
question is, if you go to 3 feet, does that solve the space problem?
No, it does not solve the space problem. You would still need some satellite rooms in a couple of the grades.
Okay.
But I will say, and I'm sorry that I'm sounding negative on this, but you will have a staffing issue.
Aaron?
Thanks. So I understand that when these plans were developed, there was a strong sentiment to have 6 feet. I understand the origins of that. I understand why we do it, but I do wonder if any of the teachers have shifted in their comfort level with that. I wouldn't support going less than 6 feet unless the teachers were in support of it, but I think that the idea of doing any sort of live streaming in grades 3 through 5 is just strikes me as highly problematic, and it just sounds like a miserable setup for our teachers, particularly in those grades. So it's possible that they might be willing to explore some of these other options if it means that we can do our full hybrid model of getting cohorts in 4 days a week. And I know you said we would still need some satellite rooms, but we have some staff. So it sounds like I would like to know, again, assuming the teachers were potentially on board, I would like to see it mapped out based on the available paras and tutors that we have, based on the classrooms we know we have for 3rd, 4th, and 5th at all 5 of our schools. If we went down to 5 feet, if we went down to 4 feet, how many could we fit in a classroom? You know, if we've got a class of 18 kids, maybe that eliminates the satellite. If we've got a class of 25, we probably still need a satellite. But again, we're not completely devoid of support staff. We're just don't have enough to pull it off for all of them. But to me, knowing that there are other towns that have been operating with less than 6 feet of space, I think it's something that we owe it to the students to explore whether it's viable. My
So,
other
Erin, to answer your
question,
question,
yeah.
I don't need to research it. I would not be able to open up school at Birch Meadow, Killam, and Wood End.
Even if we reduce desk space.
Yes, because I have classes that are higher. You would have to go to 3 feet, and then still classes that are higher than 23, you would still need satellite classrooms.
Can paras be shifted?
No, we're already short-staffed in paras. We are also short-staffed with special ed paras. I'm concerned about our staffing levels right now. I really am, and I know I'm coming across like Debbie Downer, but I'm concerned about the safety of the kids that are currently in our building. And because when I'm seeing principals that are actually have to go in and substitute teaching classrooms because we're short now, what's it going to look like when we have more kids in the building? We don't have another level of people that we can have teach these classes or fill in. We don't have substitute teachers right now. They don't exist. I'm very concerned about this. We have special ed programs that are running short-staffed.
My other question is regarding parents as paras. If there are parents who are willing to do it as a job share, can we, and if you can get the specifics figured out on that, about what the expectations would be, I would volunteer myself to help spread the word on that and help get that out. I think there would be interest, but I think we have to be really clear, what are we opening it up to? Could it be 4 people sharing a position? Does it have to be 2 people? How flexible can we be on that? And I think there's also a question of, can parents work in their child's school? I've heard some conflicting information about that. But I think if we could get that crystallized and get that out around town, I do think there would be some interest for that.
Chuck, may I continue, or?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Another question that's come up is plexiglass dividers. Early on, we looked into having plexiglass dividers. This actually is a virus and bacteria attraction. And if you picture having 15 of these in every single classroom, or more, if you're going to use less than 3 feet, less than 6 feet, we would not have the bandwidth to effectively disinfect all of these on a regular basis. And early on, Desi said that this would not be a good resource to use, is to have the plexiglass dividers. Another question that came up were schools that have staffing already allowed to start. We are a school district that has been focusing on trying to solve this problem across the board. Everything that we've done up to this point has been by releasing grade levels at a time. I don't think that we want to start having schools compete against each other just because one school may have more staffing than another. It is an equity issue, and I know people have said, well, we've already disputed that because we've opened up some levels over others. Yes, but we've done that across a grade level and not with just individual schools. In conversations that I've had with the building principals, we are all in agreement that that would not be a good practice to do, is to start opening up one level over one grade in one school or multiple grades in one school over another one. I think Sean has a question.
I'm sorry, Sean.
Not a question. I know we're being probably difficult this evening. I just want to say, like, I fully support that concept, right? That, you know, that's a line we don't want to cross where we have schools competing with one another for staff. So I'm fully supportive of that.
Thank you.
Student teachers is another one that came up. Student teachers, you actually could not have doing a satellite classroom because they're supposed to be supervised by the cooperating teacher, which would be a classroom teacher. So we actually couldn't use them. Any agreement that you have with a college and university, you can't really use them for that role. They're actually there to learn how to teach. So we wouldn't be able to use them for satellite classrooms. I will tell you right now that with everything else that our teachers are going through, to have them also have the additional responsibility of supervising a student teacher may be a lot right now. I believe that we've only got one student teacher right now in the entire district. And then the other one, other towns are doing this, why not us? I will tell you that don't believe everything that is on a document that may be on a website, because I'm having lots of conversations with superintendents that are either just going now to hybrid or are still remote, and not necessarily because they're a red community. Every community is having their struggles right now with phasing in hybrid models. And I go back to something I said originally. The plan that we put together, which the school committee did approve on August 14th, I believe, is a very, very strong plan that is well respected by other communities. We felt it had a strong synchronous teaching component, which a lot of school districts don't. We feel that it had more in-person attendance, which other school districts didn't. To now deviate from a plan, I just think it is not a good move. We built our plan on health and safety and strong learning. And I believe that what our teachers been doing and the work that we've done in our schools and the practices that we've put in place for health and safety are a very strong model and are going to help us through this roller coaster when we have to change back to a remote at some point. Because my guess is it's going to happen. I hate to say it. So those are the different things that I've heard so far. I'm more than happy to continue to meet with parents, to talk to parents. I said that I would hold community forums next week to help continue to answer the questions. But that's the end of my fall reopening report.
Carla?
Thank you, John, for your presentation. I've had a lot of people call me, and I've been talking to quite a few people, and I do have strong opinions, as everybody else does, on this. I am going to commend you for your plan. I personally feel like Reading's plan is one of the best. And I feel that the decisions you made along the way really benefited staff and students. And I would caution you, parents, whomever, to sort of stick with your plan. And I'm going to explain that a little bit. The one thing that I have heard abundantly clear is our synchronous model right now is working. That these teachers are knocking it out of the park. They have these kids engaged for 6 hours a day. That it's going really well, but they want kids to be in the classroom, okay? Lots of other districts are not doing the live learning that we're doing. I've heard from parents that they are relieved and happy that their involvement with their students and what they're doing during the day has been limited. So for parents who are fortunate enough to be able to work at home, they are still able to work at home and have little ones at home as well. So huge kudos to Reading for pulling that off, okay? I totally get what you're saying with the satellite classrooms and having, I caution from, I know with the high school, we've changed our model a little bit, going from not having satellite classrooms to try and get the kids in a different way. High school kids would be able to live stream. That puts an extra burden on the teachers, but I think with an older crowd of students, that is more doable than it would be with grades 3 to 5. I caution parents, because I know I've talked to so many of you that really want those 3 to 5, the kids in grades 3 to 5 to be in the building. Let's do it right. Let's not wait. Let's do it the right way. Don't have those kids do that live streaming option if it's not going to be beneficial for them. Let's solve our staffing issue, right? If we solved our staffing issue right now, we would be in school. So let's, I truly feel like Reading has been on the forefront of how we've dealt with this whole situation and how we've rolled out classes during this fall. So let's be on the forefront in terms of how we are going to staff those vacancies. So staffing companies, right? Have we reached out to staffing companies for these positions, not for the teacher specific positions, but for the para positions? Parents, how many parents have said so that was one question. The second one is, how many parents have said, we will do anything. What do you need from us? We will help. And I know there is some sort of reluctancy there, and I hear it, but we all volunteer in the schools, right? We all volunteer during field trips, during library, during Colonial Day or wherever. Can there be, can we target some positions in the school to cover the lunchroom? So an employee doesn't have to cover, an employee can cover the lunchroom, excuse me. The para right now who's an employee who's covering a lunchroom, put them in a classroom, right? But have that position available for parent volunteers, right? A sign-up genius with all those vacancies through the rest of the semester, right? So 11 positions that we need staffed, and maybe I'm overstating that a little bit, but I'm just going to say that 11 positions that we need staffed through Christmas break, right? Up until Christmas break. That's 11 positions. If you do it on a day-to-day basis, you set up a sign-up genius. I'll set up the sign-up genius, set up that sign-up genius, and then you have a contingency. You have a parent who is coming in to volunteer during that time, to staff lunch, whatever the situation is. If they can't be there, we have a list of other people who can step in. I guarantee that the parents in Reading and even non-parents in Reading, you get them Corey checked and all that, check with Bob about the liability piece of it. You will get those volunteers set up. We will be the school district that people look forward to and look towards for what we're doing right. But don't don't renege, don't go back in your plan on what is best for kids, because what is best for third to fifth graders, from what I understand, and what you're telling me, is not to live stream. Get them in the classrooms, because these kids need to be in the classrooms, but let's do it the right way. Let's not sacrifice the quality of what we're giving these kids because we want to get them in 2 weeks later. But utilize, we have to think differently, and we have to think out of the box. Utilize these parents. You'll get the volunteers. Even if you say, come in for a day, you'll get those volunteers to staff these schools. And let's bring that through Christmas break. And then we'll worry about it on the other side, because who knows where we're going to be at that point. But I guarantee, until you can fill those staffing positions, let's get this fix in, because that's an easy fix. And if you get the extra help, shoot, maybe you'd get extra people to take some of the burden off of these teachers and administrators. So that's how I see it. I've been thinking a lot about it, listening to parents. Everybody most parents are very happy with what they're getting right now from our teachers, that is the big issue, and we've already conquered that. So let's figure out how to move forward, and let's bite off a little piece and say, let's see if we can get this place staffed up through the end of December. So
I appreciate those suggestions. Thanks, Carla.
Aaron had a question.
wait, can he just answer my 2 questions about staffing?
I think John was done talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
No, that's okay. So we have looked from a special ed perspective. We did look at agencies. Unfortunately, we haven't had much success. We have not looked at it from a regular ed or tutoring. We could certainly do that. I'm not sure we're going to have a lot of luck if we didn't have any luck with special ed, but we can certainly look into that. What was your other question? I'm sorry, Carla.
Just the other piece of, can we put existing paras into the classrooms, have parent volunteers for lunchroom, for non-special ed type of situations, right? If you can make it appropriate for parent volunteers, right?
Yeah,
Those
I see what you're saying.
You may have to do some shuffling around, but this is temporary.
Right.
And I think the parents will come in.
We can certainly look into that to see if we can do some shuffling. But your suggestions are well taken. Obviously I have to sit down and talk to the building principals about the thoughts.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Carla said, she said it so well. I don't feel like I have to repeat it all, but none of my questions are criticism of our current plan. I think our plan is fantastic. I have heard many other plans, many other towns, and to be frank, none of them measure up to the quality and time and attention from teachers that I think our students are getting. And I do think that the remote learning is going exceptionally well for the majority of students. I just love our hybrid plan. So I would like to see us get there for all grades. So my questions are more, let's explore every possibility. And if in fact the teachers are open to looking at some different ideas, I just want to make sure that we are open as well. One of your questions regarding parent volunteers, I know, was liability, which sounds like something you can get verification on. But you also mentioned confidentiality. And can we have a contract or something that this would be a unique volunteer kind of situation, but I feel like we could think outside the box and come up with something to perhaps make it work. How many classrooms do we have total of 3 through 5 across the district?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's like 16 or something. Or?
Yeah, something like that. On average, if there's 3 classrooms per grade,
It's probably 45, right?
yeah, it's 45. Yeah.
So there's a few that we could staff right now, and then the rest we need those 11 positions filled. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, the tutor paraeducator vacancies would be used for the primarily for the satellite classrooms, for lunch coverage. Those are probably the 2 main areas.
And are there any
This isn't even
situations?
special ed related, because that's a whole nother
Right,
group of vacancies that we're dealing with.
and I understand that. That I get. I would just like to see us approach this with as much as possible on the table, knowing that we have willing and able people in our community who really want to see this work. Obviously, our goal would still be to fill those positions, but given where we are in the year, it just feels daunting that we're going to fill them anytime soon. And I would hate to see those grades kept out of school or thrown into a model that's really not appropriate for them, or that's going to put even greater stress on our teachers in the short term. So that was the point of, what I'm pushing here.
Thank you.
Tom?
So a lot of great points already said by many of the other committee members. I'm on board with a lot of that. I just want to throw an idea or two out there, and then also, Chuck, we have some public comment on this exact topic that I feel like would be a good time to raise it now as well. My first point or thought in regards to ideas for staffing, and that's really what we're doing here, John, right, is we're discussing how can we possibly fill this, because you and the administrative team have been going all out trying to take care of it. You've been in classes, you've been interviewing candidates, you've been all over the place. So it's not a lack of effort, it's just sometimes having other people step back and say, what about this helps add to the brainstorming and bring other ideas to the table. So one that I just had as I was thinking about this, especially as people were talking about staffing agencies, is the idea that maybe we kind of subcontract to a degree. I've heard that SNL University is closing down, right? As a result of some of the kids coming back into school this week, they've essentially closed down. So if that's the case, is there something there whereby the staff that used to be at SNL University could fill some of these para positions, either via subcontract with SNL University or directly hiring, going after them appropriately? So that's just one example, but is there, we use that model from a staffing perspective when it came to, it was a little bit specialized, but when it came to after school, related stuff last year. So is it something we could pull something together like that to do a subcontracting process to fill some of these positions as well?
So SNL University actually isn't the one that employed those staff that was AlphaBest.
Yep.
And AlphaBest is now, I didn't know that they had closed down, but AlphaBest has probably moved their staff to another community, because my understanding is there's a lot of these programs that are being offered in different towns during the day. So AlphaBest is like a national company.
Mm-hmm.
So we would not be able to use that staff because they already are employed by AlphaBest.
Okay.
We've also looked at our furloughed extended day staff to see if they were available. We've not gotten much luck from that either. So we have looked into that.
So we're literally, lifting up every rock and looking under it to see what we can find. And, you know, again, I think we're all applauding the effort here. We're just trying to come up with different ideas. Just building on the volunteer idea a little bit. I think that is something I would love to see us figure out a little bit. And I hear one of the concerns you're raising, and I'm wondering if even a volunteer could help with the concerns you're raising, which is the bandwidth of the principals to help coordinate. You know, Carla kind of threw out the, okay, let's put the Sign Up Genius out there, but maybe on a school by school level, we can have a volunteer coordinator that has the responsibility working with the principal to be the one who's going to make sure that you have the appropriate volunteers in the buildings, that they're signed up, so the principal doesn't have yet another job. And I have a feeling, based upon some of the emails and based upon some of the phone calls we've all been receiving, there might be, you know, at least one parent per some of those elementary schools would be willing to sign up to do that and track people down and help out and things like that. So I'm conscious of the concern that we're putting even more burden on some of the senior staff members, and if there's anything we can do to help that too, I'd like us to consider even that portion and in the outcry for help, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. So that's just one more idea here. You don't need to answer that one, just something to think about. And Chuck, if you don't, we can kind of think now's a good time to go through public comment.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, so the first one that I have is Katie Dufosse.
I have one before that I had classified it because it came in the middle of the meeting, and that's from Rebecca Strom. It doesn't necessarily say public comment, but it
Yeah,
came
no,
in.
I had hers too. I had hers that, right. Okay. Go ahead. You want to read that one?
Sure, I'll just read that one. It switches back to the high school versus the elementary, but it's still good. So concerns with changes to RMHS hybrid model. Good evening, members of the Reading School Committee, Dr. Doherty, Mrs. Boynton, and Mr. Goldstein. I'm writing to express my great concern over the major changes to the hybrid model at RMHS as outlined in the superintendent's fall reopening update number 18. Reducing the number of days my 10th and 11th grade children are in school, in person in school, to 4 days per month is unacceptable. How can this plan be considered hybrid when students are only in school 1/5 of the time? How does the district not foresee this issue with staffing of satellite classrooms when this model was proposed? How are neighboring districts able to successfully implement a true hybrid model and Reading is unable to? I understand this is a challenging and unprecedented time, but this plan fails our high school students at a critical time in their lives. For looking at RMHS job postings on Talent Ed, it appears there's only 5 teaching positions open at this time. How can this small number of open positions be enough to change the proposed hybrid model so drastically and unexpectedly? It seems like there are other factors in play that are not being shared with the Reading Public Schools families, and I strongly believe we deserve to know all the reasons contributing to this change in RMHS and grades 3 through 5 hybrid model. I'm also concerned with the statement Dr. Doherty included in his latest update stating, "We worked with the RTA on reviewing other models for RMHS, but collectively feel this model was the best option of the least optimum options." I wonder how much union concerns played a role in this dramatic change. I also wonder what were the other least optimum options. Dr. Doherty also writes, "Our plan is to go to the original model once we're able to hire more staff." My concern is, what if our district is not able to hire more staff? Most of the RMHS open teaching positions on Talent Ed have been open for at least 3 weeks. I'm fearful that these positions will remain open and my children will not have the opportunity to attend a true hybrid model at RMHS. The district needs to come up with another plan so that our students can return to school as originally outlined for the DESE. I look forward to your response with answers to my questions listed through this email. This change to RMHS hybrid model is not slightly changing our hybrid model as written in the superintendent's update, but it's major, disruptive, and unacceptable change. Our students deserve better. Thank you, Rebecca Strom.
Okay.
Could I just not respond? Because I think my presentation has responded to a lot, and the responses I've given to all the emails that are in the packet. But I would also strongly encourage that. To me, there's a lot of building-based questions that could go right to the building principal. So I would encourage Rebecca Strom to talk to Mrs. Boynton.
Okay. I can read the next one from Katie LaPlante. And it's high listening to the meeting now, I think there is a high level of parent interest to volunteer in school. I understand the privacy issue, but can a layer be added for volunteer screening? In addition to Corey, could we consider a non-disclosure to cover privacy? Thank you, Katie LaPlante.
We have
So I
three
think
more.
I think someone brought that up. Might have been Aaron. I can't.
I think both Carla and Aaron brought that up.
Does someone want it? So it looks like Allison Sillers sent the same email twice. I can read that. I fully agree that our remote model is strong. I fully agree special education in K-2 must be prioritized first. What I do not understand is why our youngest learners, students age 8 to 10, would not be prioritized above the middle and high school students. Please explain this to me. So
I can explain the middle school piece. We didn't have any vacancies in paraeducators or other staff. We had 3 teacher vacancies at one school that we filled. So I can't transfer teacher staff to the elementary. So that level was ready to go with the hybrid model. So we went with it.
Okay. There's the next one was Jen Kane. I guess I keep reading. Dr. Doherty, I think we all feel that these young 8 to 10-year-old young children and their education deserve to be our main priority. Can't we reassess the building plan and resurvey our staff to see if there's any way a combination of the parental para support plus possibly reducing the need for some of these satellites across the district could work? Maybe one solution alone won't get us there, but I do think the teachers want to work with us and they want to be back in with our kids, their students, just like we parents want our little 8 to 10-year-olds to be with their teachers in person, all caps. And we as parents want to help. Please let us do for our kids and for our teachers. They need this and they deserve it. And we had one come in from Adriana Lombardo, and it is, have you used a staffing agency to fill the HR position? Have you reached out to HR consultants? Having an HR person would solve a lot of our problems. So I'm thinking she heard us discuss that already, but.
Yeah, I don't think hiring an HR person would solve the problems that we're facing right now with all the vacancies. The fact of the matter is, and this is a problem in all of the school districts that I have contact with, there's a staffing shortage across the area. This is not just a Reading issue.
Tom, I think I got all the.
You got them all. Yep.
Okay, is there any other questions from the committee on this? Okay, thank you, John.
I think Aaron just raised her hand.
Oh, Aaron?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so can you just clarify next steps?
I have to talk to the building principals. I can't promise anything until I talk to them. And then, a lot of this, even if you had volunteer coordinators or the building principals still need to play a part in it because ultimately they're in charge of their buildings. So I'm going to have to sit down and talk to them about what our next steps are.
Okay. And can I clarify one more thing? I know we've kind of been focusing on grades 3 through 5. You mentioned that the high school has, has openings for 6 paras and 2 long-term teachers.
Right now, they do, yeah.
If those 8 positions were filled, could we run the full hybrid model?
No, we would need some additional positions, but right now, we've got to fill those because those are critical positions just to do what we need to do.
So at some point, I would really like a better grasp on how many holes we have to run that model there. So, you know, specifically cohort A, block A, we have this many openings. Cohort A, block B, we have this many openings. I'd like a better idea of where we have holes in our satellite model. Is that possible? I assume that's something that's already been. At this point,
Erin, the bigger issue is filling those critical positions that if we put out even more positions, it's not going to matter because we can't get people to fill those positions. The positions we need are para-educator and tutor positions. I mean, that's the bottom line.
I understand that, John, but my concern is that even if we hire those people, that we're still a long ways off from being able to run the model.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't have a lot of other alternatives right now.
Is that information that I can see? What I'm asking.
I don't have access to that information right now, Erin.
That's not, wouldn't that be something that would have already had to be figured out? How many holes were in the schedule so that you could figure out that you couldn't do the model?
We're working on the different nuances. I don't have that information.
Okay.
We've been focused on trying to get this up and running. We've been focused on trying to get the building ready for October 26th and to fill the 6 vacancies that we currently have and 2 long-term sub positions.
I understand where all the priorities have been, and I'm grateful for that work that has gone in. I know it has been tireless and endless. I would still like a better picture of how many holes we have in the high school schedule.
We'll do the best we can, Erin. That's all I can promise you.
Thank you.
Okay, we had one other email that just came in for public comment. I'll read it. Dear school committee, thank you for all of your work. It would seem Reading should increase the pay of the paras. Excuse me. Being a para is not always easy work and the pay is not great. If you can even attract half the amount of staff you need, it would help get more kids in. While funding may be an issue, this would not or should not be a permanent para pay increase. This should be a short-term fix to a problem to get the kids in the building. Respectfully, Alicia Williams.
So may I comment on that, Chuck?
Yep.
Anything that requires additional compensation would have to be collectively bargained. We just can't unilaterally do it. I will tell you that we've had other conversations about compensation with the different unions. And unless you do something across the board, you're not, meaning the current staff, you're not going to get additional compensation.
When you say additional staff, you mean all the teachers or all the additional other paras?
I'm talking about anything that requires the bargaining of additional compensation.
I know that. I'm
Employees.
saying, are you saying that we couldn't just give paras an increase? We'd have to give it to all teachers.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about all employees in a bargaining unit.
No, I understand that, but
And I will tell you, other school districts that have a much higher per pupil than us have just as many, if not more, vacancies with their paraeducators as we do. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is not that I'm not saying that we pay top dollar. That's not what I'm saying. But the people just aren't out there. They don't want to go into these jobs right now.
John Park?
Yeah, John just brought up a very valid point. I could point to multiple districts where they're paying $20 to $25 an hour for a para, and they're 40 to 50 paras short right now. Not to mention the collective bargaining agreement, obviously, but it's not a unique issue to Reading alone. I do think at some point we need to look at our hybrid model. I think we do have one of the better hybrid models out there. We need to get our students into schools. That should be our first and foremost primary focus. You know, opening up sports. We've got sports teams that played a red zone town on Monday. That's not helping us get our students back in school. We need to focus on what's in front of us right now, which is getting every student back into a seat in school. I don't know, and I've brought this up before, this HR position is important. It's going to take work off of other people's plates that shouldn't be doing the work and allow them to focus on what they need to focus on. This is something that we need to get filled. And until it's filled, we've got an issue.
And John, to that point, we are working on that, but that's not the reason why we have so many vacancies.
Oh, I understand that, Dr. Doherty.
No, that was my original point. What I meant was hiring this position isn't going to magically create all of these positions to be filled.
No, but it's going to allow those people that are doing that HR work to focus on their own jobs.
Oh, totally agree, because I'm one of them.
Okay, and so we just had another email come in from public comment, and it says, thank you for reading my message. I have the exact same question as Aaron Gaffin. How many staff members are needed to implement the originally proposed hybrid model at RMHS? I would think that these numbers would have been calculated prior to making this proposal. Thank you again, Rebecca Schramm. And well, so I think, you know, you said you're going to get back to us on that, or?
I'm going to work with Mrs. Boynton to do the best we can on that. I'm just not sure that that's going to solve any of the problems that we're facing right now.
Yeah, and I don't think any of this and I appreciate you're under fire here, John, and I don't think any of these questions are people. I think they're just people trying to make suggestions.
I understand that, Chuck. I just want to add that I am equally as frustrated as everyone else. I want this to work badly. I want these kids back in school. And so.
And I know that. I know that.
What you're sensing from me and what the community is sensing from me is I want to do the best job I can for this, for the teachers, the staff, the parents, and I'm frustrated, yes. So that's the frustration you're hearing from me.
I understand. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, John. Now, to the a collaborative board appointment. Tom?
Sure. Motion to appoint Superintendent John F. Doherty as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the North Shore Education Consortium for the 2020-2021 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none. Tom,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, thank you. And now we will have reports.
We have one more collaborative or appointment, Chuck.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have the two. Yeah.
Yep. And we also have the consent agenda, so I don't know if you want to do that before reports or after, but
Yep.
SEAM appointment, move to appoint Superintendent John F. Doherty as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the SEAM Collaborative for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Second. Aaron,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Okay, yeah, let's do the consent agenda next.
Just real quick, it might be too late now, but John, did you have a point or a question that you?
It's too late. It should have been comment prior to vote, so I'll let it go.
Okay. Move
That's why
to.
that's why we need to be back in person.
I don't think it would have stopped that vote, Chuck. That one was a quick one. No worries.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Anyone have anything they want to take out? Seeing none. Tom,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Thank you. I apologize, John, for missing you on that.
No worries, Chuck.
It's now time for reports. So it looks like, John, you have a formal report.
Yeah,
For
we have
everybody?
a few. We have a few. Chris and Jen are going to do the first report.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you for letting us just give you a quick update. Along with continuing to support our learning and teaching and special ed teams in our day-to-day and hybrid work and remote learning and all of that, we wanted to give you some recent updates since the last time we spoke. John, if you can go to the next slide. So as most folks realize, last Friday was a professional development day. One of a few that we are offering this year in district. After our 10 onboarding days, as I like to call them, where we spent so much time, we spent a lot of the time professionally developing last Friday, except for Birch Meadow, whose PD days were today and tomorrow, that our staff attended 20 live and recorded workshops. One of the things that we're really excited about, and perhaps one of the few silver linings of this new COVID situation that we're in, is that we have been recording and archiving all of our trainings so that folks can continue to refer to them. They can watch them live when they're being presented, or if there's multiple offerings at the same time. I shouldn't say we had recorded some of our trainings in the past, but we're really trying to be very conscious of that, especially our internal training. Sometimes when we use outside vendors, we're not able to do that, but we have a pretty robust internal archive at this point with technology workshops, special ed workshops, remote learning content. We're really developing quite frankly, a site that we're pretty proud of. The 20 live and recorded workshops We focused on the same district priorities that we talked about at the beginning of the year, that our PD this year is going to be focused on supporting folks. I bulleted a few things here, but really it's those 3 buckets that we talked about earlier this year of really supporting staff with social emotional learning and health and safety. That's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is around issues of equity and really looking at the needs of each and every student, and really trying to differentiate our support to meet those needs. And then the 3rd bucket is around this remote learning platform and how this hybrid, whether it's full remote, whether it's partial remote, whether it's asynchronous, synchronous, all of those moving parts, and the technology supports around that. Everything from the use of new cameras that our tech team and Gail and her team have provided, as well as our fantastic tech support ITS folks that have been doing so much training. So last Friday, we really focused on bolstering our tech skills, as well as really focusing on remote learning and teaching, and really some of the very targeted tweaks that we have to make in this, continued COVID emergency. And also we are working with district leads on topics that support all students. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Jen to talk a little bit about some of the special ed programming that we retrofitted for last week and will continue to.
Good evening, everybody. Chris, thank you for that. It really was a tremendous collaborative effort. And I was really grateful to be able to teach a couple of classes for the paraprofessionals and really take some time to explain the laws and why we do what we do, and then what is the information they need to be knowing about IEPs and 504s and our DCAP to really support student learning. We also had our team chairs who did extensive trainings on executive functioning and supporting new special education teachers. Melanie Watt, who is one of our CODAs, but also our AT specialist, has been doing many trainings since the closure on how to access all different technology-related supports for student learning for both parents and teachers. And we were also able to do some nice contracting services and use the time to really have somebody that does our AT consulting with around students' communication devices come in and work with targeted groups of teachers, paraprofessionals, and speech and language pathologists, which was really nice. And Lauren Sabella, who is our behavioral health coach, is spending some time tomorrow doing some of the QBS training as well. So we really feel like we're targeting the specific needs of all of our staff, which has been really great, and a wonderful partnership between curriculum and technology and special education. The other thing that I'm just going to start and then Chris is going to finish, we also have some continued topics that really are going to carry out through all of this school year. One of them is the reading training we are doing for special education leaders and teachers and speech and language pathologists from Crafting Minds, which is Dr. Melissa Orkin's work and her protocol on really understanding reading, how reading is developed, and then how do we evaluate each piece of reading so that we can then provide targeted instruction. And that is going to be our targeted PD throughout the year to make sure by the end of the year, all of our team chairs, school psychologists, speech and language pathologists, special education teachers, as well as the curriculum folks are trained in this protocol, and that we are carrying it out as every student that has some reading concerns that we're evaluating. We use that protocol and we ensure we have the appropriate instruction. The other thing that we're doing, which is I'm very, very proud of and grateful for, is Florrie Johnson, one of our school psychologists, has put together a training we're going to be doing at every single school for the special education staff around evaluations. What are psychological assessments? Why do we do it? And what is the important takeaways? So that, again, as a staff, we are better prepared to partner with parents to ensure that we have the right assessments, to ensure we have the right instructional programming. And then Chris has some additional ongoing work that they're going to also focus on.
So in addition to our ongoing work around equity that is both at the building and district level, and we're going to continue to build that infrastructure and really create a very robust system, we are targeting, and I think I mentioned this at another school committee meeting, but we are really moving forward with targeted support on UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning. And it is a philosophy that a lot of districts have spent a lot of time and energy on. We had done it in pockets. We have quite a few staff at certain buildings that have been working with our consultant that we're working with, our coach, Emily Pat, the last couple of years. But we decided this year to make that one of our overriding themes of the year, that we're really trying to build this philosophy into the way we do work. And we're doing that right now in, during our onboarding, we had a webinar for the entire district that we really wanted folks to start using the language of UDL. Of what is it? And how do you start learning about it? But then we are doing some really intense training in two ways. We have train the trainer model, where we have several staff members from each building that have agreed to meet with her regularly, both virtually and as well as her coming into programs to really support them in the moment, like live teaching, training, coaching on UDL. And then in addition, we are offering an after-school graduate course that will start next week. So we're really excited about this work. Some of the principals have done some of this training as well. And we're really excited about it. It gives students a lot of choice in the way they access material and the way they engage, and really walks teachers through, really, as they develop their lessons, of really looking at differentiation under that lens of how are we presenting our topics, how are we assessing students, and how are we engaging them, and really providing for that rich, robust spectrum of learners we have in front of us. I know we do that in so many ways, but we can always get better at it. And the UDL philosophy is one that I have embraced as an educator for many years. And I'm excited that we're really making a commitment to this. In addition, in the last slide, it was also a mention that we did survey our staff about October 9th, asking them for suggestions of what's working, what's not working, and we have a professional development committee that will be sending out a survey in the coming weeks so that we can plan our days moving forward, because we do have several more all district professional development days built into our calendar for the remainder of the school year. So those are our updates. We just wanted to let you know that, as well as doing our regular day job and supporting staff and students across the district, that adult learning is alive and well in Reading.
Thank you, Chris and Jen. Sean?
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned, one of the big benefits of this is that a lot of the trainings are recorded now. I wonder if, if there are any of the trainings, particularly around in the equity space, that are being recorded that could be made available to us. I'd be interested, not only from the perspective of seeing kind of how you guys are approaching it, with staff, but obviously we've kind of made some degree of commitment to it as well. So
certainly, as I think we mentioned, Mr. Hightower Grant did a wonderful onboarding webinar at the beginning of the year, again, developing a common language around anti-racism education. And certainly we could make that available. I know a few school committee members have already approached me to have that shared. I'd be happy to share that. As far as a lot of the trainings that we have are really pretty heavy education specific. This is how you log on. This is how you do this. And frankly, unless it's a prepared webinar like the one, granted, when we have Q&A sessions, I wouldn't publicly release that because I want staff to be able to feel comfortable asking questions. You know, how that old terminology, there's no such thing as a dumb question, right? So we want folks to ask as many questions. This we're all learning together. But yeah, we could totally share things. I mean, what I could do is really give some topics, and then if there is some interest, one of the things that we are talking about is with our partnership is I know the library is now talking about having some conversations at night. So Grant and I actually had a conversation with Amy about that, about doing some partnering and maybe having some community sessions where the same information that is being presented in Reading or similar in our Reading Public Schools would be offered at the community at large. And I think there'd be a lot of interest in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're going to continue now, Chuck?
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay. So we're going to switch now to operations, and Gail's going to talk about 3 areas.
Great. Thank you very much. I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes. I know that a lot of the focus has definitely been on the training, the PD, getting all of the students back into the classrooms, but we've also had some good news and a lot going on within the food services department, which I also associate with sort of the overall health and well-being of the students. We did just recently receive, I think it came out on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, that DESE and the USDA have extended the distribution program that we're currently doing through June of 2021. So what that enables us to do is the seamless summer program that we ran since basically March 13th when the schools closed down. We are able to provide the distribution that we're doing to students that are currently not in school. So we're providing 7 days of meals, as well as the farm to fresh boxes that we're doing, the produce boxes. In addition, we're also able to provide free lunches to any students attending in person. So it's all students, basically anyone that shows up to our distribution site, whether you attend schools in Reading, are entitled to the free meals, and any students attending in person. The slide that we pulled together was just to show people what our numbers are currently looking like. So we started the meal distributions in March. We have seen a steady increase, as you can see, April through September. We started with about 2,100 meals distributed in April to 14,500 distributed in September, and through Tuesday we've done over 7,900 meals in October. So we are definitely seeing the need increase. We are, as we're bringing more students back into school, we've also started to see an increase in the number of meals we're serving in school, but we do want folks to know that regardless of how we distribute it, it is free to all people through June 2021. So I do have to give a shout out to Danielle Collins and her staff, who are just doing an amazing job of trying to be creative with what they're distributing. We're now getting 2 pallets of the farm produce boxes a week, which the ones we're getting now are actually pretty impressive. They have dairy, cheese, meats, eggs, produce, so that they are very nice as we're trying to help the farmers that are also struggling right now. So we will be putting additional flyers out to folks to let them know that this is going on, and it also is supporting our program because we do get reimbursed at the free rate for all the meals we're preparing. We are also recommending that individuals do still complete the free and reduced applications that we have, because even though the meals themselves are free. We want to make sure we are still tracking that information. We need it for our title grants, as well as we do utilize that information for some of our other programs as far as kindergarten, athletics, and extracurricular. So we will be asking people to continue to complete that information as well. I think the next update we wanted to provide, and I do think we were able to share a few slides earlier, I think on the Facebook
These
page.
not showing up?
I think I can see it, but I don't know.
We
if
can see
I
that-
can see it.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So we wanted to provide a few slides for the Birch Meadow modulars, which we're happy to announce that we did get the certificate of occupancy based upon all of the final inspections that was issued on Tuesday. As part of that, that includes ensuring that all of our fire alarms and all of the life safety information is done. The technology has been installed. I think there might be a couple of pictures in here as well of the smart boards. The access points have been installed. The furniture assembly and move-in is happening we started earlier this week. The teachers started moving in today. They'll be doing that today and tomorrow. All of the site work has been completed, and we are working on some minimal closeout documentation that includes all the warranties and the owner's manuals as well. So we're very excited that we will be opening these to students on Monday. And I don't know if oh, there we go. A few pictures of the outside. I think we have a couple of pictures of the ramps, and then there should be some, hopefully, of the inside, the cubbies that were all assembled and installed. And I do have to give a shout out to the facilities, maintenance, custodial staff, the teachers and paras, and Julia Hendricks has been amazing through all of this. As you can imagine, having construction going on while you're trying to bring students back. The technology group has been amazing, and everyone just came together to make sure that Monday will be as smooth of an opening for the modulars. And I think the teachers are very excited. We were over there today, and they all are very excited to be unpacking and setting up within the modulars. And then the last thing, as we are trying to keep, this was my favorite event over the past week. We are continuing, you know that I try to follow all of my procurement rules and regulations. So we had to put our pizza vendor out to bid. So we had our pizza tasting today in the cafeteria. And I will say that these were students that were Birch Meadow students, so they did not have school today. We had another student that was on a break from his class, and another student who got parent and principal permission to participate. So we had a group of students as well as a group of some of the administrators down at the far end of the cafeteria, socially distanced, that participated in our pizza tasting today. So we are trying to have some normalcy in a non-normal world. So we just wanted to share one fun event that we were able to pull off at the high school today and who doesn't like pizza tasting? So that was the fun event that Danielle and I worked on today.
Great, thank you.
I saw a couple of smiles, so I think people appreciated the mask-wearing children doing pizza tasting.
Sean has a question.
Yeah, Gail, I was going to ask which of the three varieties of pizza are up for bid. Is it Wild Mike's Cheesy Pizza Bites, or the Patriot Pizza, or Sal's, I think is the other one?
It was it would have been the old, it was actually Lisa's Pizza that was previously. So it's the pizza we used to do on Fridays. It's the non-commodity pizza. So the pizza sticks are still on the menu. So this is sort of our outsourced Friday pizza.
Got it.
So it was fun. The kids, it was great to see them. They had a blast. They had their little scorecards, and they each got their multiple slices to taste it. So it was a lot of fun. We had a good time with it today.
Great, thank you, Gail.
Chuck, I got a
Yep.
couple items. So I just wanted to keep the committee informed. we didn't get a lot of guidance from DESE on athletic events. Now that we've got more and more communities that are showing spikes in their infection rates, we felt it would be prudent for us to put together a protocol on whether or not to hold athletic events with other communities during COVID-19. So we've put this together as some guidance in our decision making instead of just flat out deciding. We did meet with the town command team, which includes the Board of Health, on Monday to put this by them, and they fully supported what we were doing. So essentially, when we're looking at athletic contests now, we would have our athletic contests if both districts or communities are designated as green or yellow with no known high school cases, or if one district or community is designated as red for the first or second week and there are no known high school cases. We will not participate in an athletic contest under the following conditions. If there are known high school cases at either school, regardless of the designation, and we would receive that information from the other district ahead of time. One or both communities have been red for 3 weeks or more. And the 3 weeks is consistent with what DESE said we should be using for school closure, that we should be using 3 weeks worth of data. And then obviously spectators play a role in this too. So if either community is designated as red, regardless of the number of weeks, we would not allow spectators to attend an event. And as a Middlesex League, we have still kept the guideline of 50 spectators at an event instead of raising it to 100. We were concerned about going higher than the 50 at this point, given everything that's going on right now and the increases are happening. I think Carla had a question.
Yeah, Carla.
Hi, John. Can you define known high school cases? Is
So
that
when there's an identified case that has been reported to the school,
regardless if that student is on the team, is a remote learner, is in hybrid, is in the school?
yes,
I mean,
that is correct.
So if there's a student who is full-time remote learner and has COVID, the high school teams can't participate?
Well, if a student, it depends on the situation. So I'll give you, there are a few communities that are fully remote right now. So all of those students are able to participate in sports. If it's a student like similar, in Reading, we have a group of students that are fully remote, absent of a hybrid. So, because the parents have chosen that. So that would be different. If they were fully remote because it was a choice and they were tested positive, that's different. But if a whole school is already remote and the kids are participating in athletics, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Thank you.
John, is this protocol going to be, is it our protocol or is it what all the other Middlesex League
No,
towns?
it's strictly a Reading protocol. I just felt uncomfortable not having some sort of standard in place when we were making decisions about competitions.
So who would we go to find out if a high school had a positive case? The athletic director or the
So
principal?
the athletic directors would notify each other. I've had conversations already with superintendents of some of the communities we've played. The building principal certainly would also be notified.
Okay, thanks.
The other two things I wanted to talk about, one is attendance. and this is just more of a commercial about attendance. We have school every single day, whether we're remote or in person or hybrid, and we are required to take attendance, regardless of the model. DESE has created actually new categories this year for remote present and remote absent. So attendance, and at the middle and high school level, we're taking attendance every period of the day. At the elementary, we're taking it twice a day. The definition of being in school by DESE standards is if you're in school more than 50% of the school day. So attendance is absolutely critical for obvious reasons. So please make sure that if your child is not going to be in school, whether it be remote or in person, to please let the school know, because we do have to keep track of that. The other piece I wanted to bring up is that yesterday we received notice from DESE that they are changing the band protocol. So up to this point, for any instruments, brass, woodwind instruments, students are not allowed to play those indoors. It had to be outdoors. It had to be at least 10 feet physical distancing. And they need, if they could have slit masks, they would use slit masks. And also and I can't remember what they're called, but the thing you put over you can tell I never played an instrument. The bell, I think the bell piece that you put over the instrument. They're now changing their protocol a little bit so that you can have indoor band practices with certain precautions put in place. They need to be 10 feet away. They do strongly recommend you wear slit masks, or regular masks if you're not using a brass or woodwind instrument, and that you have the bell over the instrument. We are working right now with our band teachers on a safety procedure on what this is going to look like. So we've not started this yet. We want to make sure we have a strong safety plan in place before we allow this to happen. Certainly we want band to happen. It's going to get colder now, so it's going to be more difficult to have band practice outside, which is what's been going on up to this point. So we just wanted to make you aware that this change is going to be happening. We've received no guidance on changes for chorus, so that will continue to be held outdoors at this point.
Thank you.
And I believe that's all I got.
Thank you. Is there any committee reports? Sean?
No report.
Popped up first.
No report, Chuck. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Aaron?
No report tonight.
Carla?
No report.
Tom?
No report.
And John?
No report.
And I have no report.
We have one more public comment. You want to read that?
Go ahead.
I think we should let Aaron read it.
Yeah, and I would filter out a little bit of it. It's a little bit private, I would say. So, Aaron, use your best judgment.
Do you want me to read it? I can read it.
I'll read it. I think, Aaron, you're on mute if you want to read it.
You can go ahead and read it.
Okay, I'll read it. Hello all. Thank you for the great questions in this evening's school committee meeting, and especially to committee member Aaron Gaffin for asking, so what happens next? What is the plan? We will wait to see what the school principal says. I'm incredibly grateful for the amazing effort from all of our teachers and completely agree with those who said our synchronous model is great and should not change. And I know that we are all in this together. However, if it is not working for some kids, then it's not working. And there are examples provided here that are a little personal, so I'm going to skip past those. They were excited to return to school in September, and then a little excited in October. My elementary school boys have no interest now. If they get back to school soon, that will change. It will be different, but it'll be the closest thing they have to normal. It's so important for their academic success and double that for their mental health. How can we capture how many kids this is not working for? What are the long-term consequences of that? Thank you for creative problem solving, Etienne, O'Day, Barrows, and Parker. Parent.
Okay.
I mean, we don't answer everything that comes through, but I think
No,
there's an
that's a
interesting point there.
statement. That's not, there's not a question in that. That's just a statement, really.
If
Go
I
ahead.
could just add one comment for something like that, again, I would encourage the parent, if she is not done so already, to contact the teacher and the building principal.
Yeah. Is that Carla? Did you have something, or is that old? Sorry,
It's old.
getting late. Is there any other business? Or a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? Sean,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Chuck. Aye. Thank you, John, and everybody for everything tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
all.
Good night.
Everyone.